They laughed at me at the family reunion and said, "You're just a fat, lazy housewife who never accomplished anything. You're an embarrassment to this family." I smiled, nodded, and said nothing, but what I did next destroyed every single one of them, and I'm glad you're here with me to hear this story. Please like this video, and let me know which city you're listening from so I can see how far my story has traveled. My name is Catherine Morrison, I'm 52 years old and I live in Portland, Oregon. For 30 years I was the family punching bag, the joke, the failure, the one everyone felt superior to. They mocked my weight, my choices, my life. They never knew that the lazy housewife they ridiculed was actually building an empire in silence. And when I finally revealed the truth, I didn't just prove them wrong, I destroyed every assumption they'd ever made about me. Let me take you back to where it all started. I come from the Wellington family, old money from Boston. My father, Richard Wellington, was a corporate attorney. My mother, Victoria, was a socialite who measured success by country club memberships and Ivy League acceptances. I have 3 siblings. My older brother James, 56, Harvard Law, partner at a prestigious firm in New York. My sister Margaret, 54, Yale graduate, married to a surgeon, living in Connecticut with their perfect children in their perfect house. And my younger brother Thomas, 48, Stanford MBA, venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. And then there was me, Catherine, the disappointment. I was never the thin, beautiful daughter my mother wanted. I struggled with weight my entire life. I wasn't academic like James. I wasn't socially graceful like Margaret. I didn't have Thomas's business instinct. I was just Catherine, the awkward, chubby middle child who never quite fit the Wellington mold. I went to Portland State University, not an Ivy League school. I studied English literature, which my father called a degree in unemployment. I married young at 23 to a man named David Morrison. David was a high school history teacher, kind and genuine, but to my family he was just a teacher with no real prospects. The mockery started immediately. At my wedding, my brother James gave a toast where he joked, "Well, at least Catherine found someone willing to marry her." We were starting to worry. Everyone laughed. I smiled and pretended it didn't hurt. When David and I moved to Portland, far from the Wellington stronghold in Boston, my family saw it as confirmation of my failure. She couldn't make it here, so she ran away to the other coast, my mother told relatives. I heard about it through my cousin Sarah, one of the few family members who didn't treat me like garbage. David and I bought a small house in a quiet Portland neighborhood. We had 2 children, Emma and Lucas. David taught history at the local high school, and I became a stay-at-home mom. To my family, this was the ultimate failure, the final proof that Catherine Wellington Morrison had amounted to nothing. The comments at family gatherings were relentless. "Catherine, have you thought about going back to school, getting a real degree?" Margaret would ask with fake concern. "Still just staying home with the kids? Don't you want to contribute something to society?" Thomas would say. "David's still teaching high school. When is he going to get a real career?" James would joke. And my mother, Victoria, was the worst. "I had such hopes for you, Catherine. I thought maybe you'd at least marry well, but you couldn't even manage that. Now you're just a housewife getting fatter every year. It's embarrassing, honestly." I took it all. I smiled. I nodded. I pretended it didn't cut me to pieces every single time. But here's what they didn't know. Here's what I never told them. When Emma started kindergarten and Lucas was in preschool, I didn't just sit at home eating bonbons and watching soap operas like they imagined. I started writing. I'd always loved writing, always had stories in my head, so I started putting them on paper. I wrote during school hours. I wrote after the kids went to bed. I wrote on weekends while David took the kids to the park. I wrote and wrote and wrote. My first novel took me 2 years to write. It was a mystery thriller about a woman who everyone underestimated solving crimes that stumped the police. I sent it to agents. I got rejected 73 times. I didn't tell anyone, not even David at first, because I knew if my family found out they'd mock me for that too. Catherine thinks she's a writer now. How adorable. But rejection number 74 was different. A small literary agent in New York named Patricia Chen saw something in my work. She took me on. She believed in me. My first book was published by a small press when I was 32 years old. It didn't make much money, maybe $8,000 in total, but it got good reviews. Patricia encouraged me to keep writing, so I did. I wrote my second novel. This one was bigger, better. A major publishing house picked it up. It made the bestseller list for 2 weeks. I made $120,000 that year. I still didn't tell my family. Why would I? So they could minimize it. Oh, how nice, Catherine wrote a little book. That's a cute hobby. I kept writing. Book 3, book 4, each one more successful than the last. By the time I was 40, I had published 8 novels. 3 of them had been optioned for movies. One actually got made, though it went straight to streaming. I was making between $300,000 and $500,000 per year. My family still thought I was just a fat housewife doing nothing with my life. I used a pen name, C.M. Winters. My books were dark psychological thrillers with complex female protagonists who everyone underestimated until it was too late. Art imitating life, you might say. The money accumulated. David knew, of course. He was proud of me, supportive, but we agreed to keep it quiet. We lived modestly. We didn't upgrade our house or buy luxury cars. We invested wisely. We put money away for the kids' college funds. We built wealth silently, and I kept taking the abuse at family gatherings because I knew something they didn't. I was more successful than any of them, I just wasn't advertising it. The breaking point came 2 years ago at the Wellington family reunion. These happened every 5 years, a massive gathering of the entire extended Wellington clan at my parents' estate in Cape Cod. Cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone. I almost didn't go. David encouraged me. Maybe it'll be different this time, he said optimistically. Sweet David, always believing the best in people. It wasn't different, it was worse. The reunion was over 4th of July weekend. The estate was decorated with American flags and white tents on the lawn. There was catered food, an open bar, a live band. It was the Wellington family showing off their wealth and status as always. I arrived with David and our kids. Emma was 20 and home from college. Lucas was 17. We walked into the main house and I immediately felt the familiar knot in my stomach. My mother Victoria was holding court in the living room, surrounded by relatives. She saw me and her smile tightened. "Oh, Catherine, you made it. I wasn't sure you'd come all the way from Portland." "Hi, Mom," I hugged her. She barely hugged back. "My goodness, you've gained more weight, haven't you? Catherine, you really need to do something about that. It's not healthy." And there it was, less than 30 seconds. I smiled. "I'm working on it, Mom." Margaret appeared with her husband, Dr. Philip Green. "Catherine, it's been so long." The fake enthusiasm was palpable. "How are the kids? Still in public school?" "Yes, they're both doing great." "That's nice. Our children are at Exeter Academy now. Top boarding school in the country, but public school is fine too, I'm sure." James arrived with his wife, Vanessa, and their twin sons. "Little sister, still living in Portland. How's David's teaching career going? Is he a principal yet?" "No, he's still teaching. He loves it." That's great. Good for him. Someone has to educate the masses, right?" He laughed at his own joke. Thomas came over with his girlfriend du jour, a woman half his age in designer everything. "Kat, you're looking well." He clearly meant the opposite. "Still doing the stay-at-home mom thing. The kids must be in high school by now, right? Lucas is a senior. Emma's in college. So what do you do all day now that they're older?" "Oh, you know, this and that. Keeping busy." "She should get a real job," my mother interjected. "Catherine, you're still young enough to start a career. It's not too late. Maybe you could be a secretary somewhere, or work retail, something to contribute." I felt David tense beside me. Emma looked horrified. Lucas looked angry, but I squeezed David's hand and smiled. "Maybe, Mom, we'll see." The weekend continued in this vein. Every conversation was a subtle or not so subtle dig at my weight, my choices, my life, my husband, my kids' public school education. I was the family disappointment, and they never let me forget it. Saturday evening was the big formal dinner. Everyone dressed up. The extended family gathered in the massive dining room with the long table that seated 30 people. I was, of course, seated at the far end, away from the important people. After dinner, my father, Richard Wellington, stood to give a speech. He was 80 years old, still commanding, still intimidating. "I want to thank everyone for coming to our family reunion," he said in his courtroom voice. "The Wellington family has always stood for excellence, achievement, and success. I look around this table and I see lawyers, doctors, business leaders, people who have made something of themselves." He went on, praising James's law career, Margaret's charity work, Thomas's investments. He talked about various cousins and their accomplishments. He didn't mention me once, not once. Then came the moment that changed everything. My cousin Robert, who'd had too much to drink, stood up with his wine glass. "I'd like to propose a toast," he slurred slightly. "To the Wellington family, the best and brightest." Everyone raised their glasses. "Well, almost everyone," Robert continued with a laugh. He looked directly at me. "Sorry, Catherine, no offense, but you're kind of the exception that proves the rule, right? While the rest of us were out achieving things, you were, what, baking cookies and getting fat." The table erupted in uncomfortable laughter. Some people tried to shush Robert, but others were clearly amused. My brother Thomas jumped in. "Robert, come on, that's harsh." But he was smiling. "Catherine made her choices. She chose to be a housewife. Nothing wrong with that. Someone has to stay home and take care of the kids, right? Not everyone can be successful." Margaret added with false sympathy, "Catherine, honey, we're not judging you. We're just saying you could have been more. You had opportunities, you just didn't take them. You settled." James raised his glass again. "To Catherine, the family's reminder that sometimes the apple does fall far from the tree. We love you anyway." They drank, they laughed, and something inside me snapped. I stood up slowly. The room went quiet. Everyone looked at me, probably expecting me to cry or run away like I usually did. Instead, I smiled. A real smile, because I'd just made a decision. "You're right," I said calmly. "I did make choices, and I'm very happy with them. Thank you all for your concern about my life." I sat back down. David was looking at me with concern. Emma was crying quietly. Lucas looked ready to punch someone, but I was calm, eerily calm. The rest of the dinner was awkward. People tried to move on, change the subject, but the damage was done, and my decision was made. We left the next morning, cutting our visit short. On the plane back to Portland, David finally asked, "Are you okay?" What they said was inexcusable. "I'm fine," I said, and I meant it. "Actually, I'm better than fine, I just decided something." "What?" "I'm done hiding. I'm done being small. I'm done letting them think they're better than me when they have no idea who I actually am." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to show them exactly who Catherine Morrison is, and I'm going to enjoy every second of their shock." The plan came together over the next 3 months. I called my agent, Patricia. "I want to do a press tour," I told her. "A big one. I want my face out there. I'm done with the pen name anonymity." Patricia was thrilled. "Catherine, I've been begging you to do this for years. Your latest book is already a bestseller. If we put your face and real name on it, if we do interviews, podcasts, maybe even a book tour, we could double or triple your sales. Let's do it all." "What changed your mind?" "Let's just say I'm ready to stop hiding." My publicist set everything up. My newest book, The Woman They Underestimated, was already number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list under my pen name C.M. Winters. We prepared a press release announcing that C.M. Winters was actually Catherine Morrison, a 52-year-old mother of 2 from Portland, Oregon. The release went out on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, my phone was exploding. Interview requests from NPR, Good Morning America, The Today Show, major book podcasts, literary magazines. Everyone wanted to talk to the mysterious C.M. Winters, who'd been writing best-selling thrillers for 20 years in complete anonymity. My family still had no idea. None of them read mystery thrillers. They probably assumed all books were boring literary fiction or business texts. They certainly never imagined their fat, lazy housewife sister could be a successful author. I did the Today Show interview first. It aired on a Thursday morning. I wore a beautiful dress that I felt confident in, did my hair and makeup professionally, and I told my story. How I'd been writing for 20 years. How I'd published 15 novels, 3 of which had been adapted for film. How I'd sold over 8 million books worldwide. How I'd built a career while raising my family and being dismissed by people who should have supported me. The interviewer asked, "Why did you keep it secret for so long?" I smiled. "Because the people in my life who mattered knew. My husband, my kids, my close friends. And the people who didn't respect me anyway wouldn't have believed me. Sometimes success is sweeter when you don't have to defend it to people who are determined to misunderstand you." The interview went viral. Clips were all over social media. Mystery author reveals 20-year secret career. The housewife who became a best-selling author without anyone knowing. C.M. Winters unmasked. My cousin Sarah texted me that Thursday afternoon. "Oh my God, Catherine, is that you on the Today Show?" "Yes," I replied simply. "Everyone is freaking out. Your mom just saw it. She's in shock. James is calling everyone. Margaret is having a breakdown. This is amazing." My mother called me within the hour. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail again. Then came a text. "Catherine, I just saw you on television. Is this some kind of joke? Call me immediately." I didn't call her back. Not yet. The NPR interview aired the next day. Then the podcast interviews started dropping. Each one I told more of my story. I talked about being dismissed by my family. I didn't name them, but I talked about how being underestimated had fueled my work. How my protagonists were always women people underestimated until it was too late. How I'd channeled 30 years of mockery into creating stories about women who proved everyone wrong. One interviewer asked, "Do you feel vindicated now that your success is public?" "Vindication implies I needed their approval," I said. "I don't. I never did. But I'd be lying if I said there wasn't satisfaction in proving that the life they mocked was actually more successful than theirs." That clip went especially viral. My book sales exploded. The Woman They Underestimated hit number 1 on every bestseller list. My publisher ordered massive reprints of my entire backlist. Book clubs across the country were reading my work. I was invited to speak at literary festivals, conferences, universities, and my family was losing their minds. James called me. I answered this time. "Catherine, what the hell is going on? Are you really C.M. Winters?" "Yes, James, I've been C.M. Winters for 20 years. 20 years? You've been writing books for 20 years and you never told us. You never asked what I did with my time. You just assumed I was doing nothing. But those books have sold millions of copies. You've made more money than you." "Yes, James, significantly more." Silence. "Then why didn't you tell us?" "Because every time I accomplished something, you minimized it. Remember when I won that writing contest in college? You said it was cute that I had a little hobby. Remember when I told Dad I wanted to study creative writing and he said it was a waste of an education? I learned early on that you didn't actually want to hear about my successes. You wanted me to stay in the box you'd built for me, so I stopped trying to make you see me." "Catherine, that's not fair." "James, I have to go. I have an interview with the New York Times in an hour." I hung up. Margaret called next. "Catherine, Mother is devastated. She had no idea you were doing all this. You should have told her." "Why? So she could tell me I was wasting my time. So she could make it about herself. That's not, Catherine, she's your mother. She deserves to know what's happening in your life. She knew what I allowed her to know, which was exactly as much as she cared to know. When's the last time Mom called me and actually asked how I was doing? Not criticizing my weight or my choices, but genuinely asking about my life. Margaret didn't have an answer. That's what I thought, I said. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a book signing in Seattle this weekend. Thomas texted, we need to talk about this. The family is in crisis. Dad is furious that you embarrassed us on national television. I texted back, I embarrassed you by being successful. That says more about you than it does about me. The emails and messages kept coming. Relatives I hadn't heard from in decades suddenly reaching out. Some were genuinely happy for me. Most wanted to know why I'd kept it secret, why I'd made them look bad, why I'd told interviewers about being underestimated by my family. I responded to the genuine ones. I ignored the rest. My father finally called. Richard Wellington, the patriarch, the man whose approval I'd craved my entire childhood and never received. Catherine, this has gotten out of hand. You've made the family look foolish. Have I, Dad? Or have I just made you realize you were foolish for underestimating me? Don't be smart with me, young lady. You've always been difficult. No, Dad, I was never difficult. I was just different from what you wanted. And instead of accepting me as I was, you spent 30 years telling me I wasn't good enough. Well, guess what? I was always good enough. You just couldn't see it. You owe this family an apology. For what? For being successful. For proving that my choices were valid. For showing that the fat, lazy housewife you all mocked has accomplished more than most of you ever will. You're being vindictive and petty. No, Dad, I'm being honest for the first time in my life. And you can't handle it because you built your identity on being superior to me. What happens to your ego now that you know you were wrong? He hung up on me. The media attention continued for months. My book stayed at #1 for 12 weeks. Netflix announced they were developing a series based on my novels. I was invited to speak at literary events around the world. Book deals for future novels came with advances I'd only dreamed of. And through it all, my family spiraled. According to Sarah, who gleefully reported everything to me, my mother had a breakdown at her book club when someone brought up my interview and asked if she was C.M. Winter's mother. Victoria had to admit she'd had no idea her daughter was a famous author. The social humiliation was destroying her. James was dealing with partners at his firm, asking why he'd never mentioned his sister was C.M. Winters. You must be so proud, they'd say. And he'd have to admit he'd never even read my books, didn't even know I was writing them. Margaret's perfect life took a hit when her society friends started buzzing about how Catherine Morrison had been at their prep school together, and Margaret had never mentioned her famous sister. Were you not close? They'd ask. And Margaret would have to explain that yes, we were family, but no, she hadn't known about my career because she'd never asked. Thomas faced the most professional embarrassment. As a venture capitalist, he was supposed to spot successful investments and talented people, yet his own sister had built a multi-million-dollar career right under his nose, and he'd never noticed. His business partners ribbed him endlessly. How did you miss that investment opportunity? She was right there. The public narrative became about a woman who'd been dismissed by her wealthy, snobbish family and succeeded despite them. I didn't have to make them look bad. Their own actions did that. Every interview where I mentioned being underestimated, people connected the dots. Those awful family members who mocked her. Social media was ruthless toward my family, even though I'd never named them publicly. 6 months after my Today Show interview, I received an invitation. The Wellington family wanted to have a reconciliation dinner at my parents' estate. All the siblings, spouses, parents, to clear the air and move forward as a family. I showed the invitation to David. Should I go? Do you want to go? Part of me wants to see them squirm. Part of me wants to just be done with them entirely. What does your gut say? My gut said go, so I did. I flew to Boston with David. We rented a car and drove to Cape Cod. The estate looked exactly the same. Still imposing, still designed to intimidate. We were the last to arrive, which was intentional on my part. Everyone else was already in the dining room when we walked in. The atmosphere was thick with tension. My mother looked older, fragile. My father looked angry but controlled. James, Margaret and Thomas all looked uncomfortable. We sat down. A catered meal was served. Nobody spoke except for small talk about the weather and the food. Finally, over dessert, my mother cleared her throat. Catherine, we invited you here because we want to apologize. I waited. We didn't realize what you were doing with your time. We made assumptions. We said hurtful things, and we're sorry for that. Are you sorry you said the things? Or are you sorry you were wrong? My mother blinked. What's the difference? If you're sorry you said hurtful things, that means you recognize you were cruel regardless of whether I was successful or not. If you're sorry you were wrong, that means you're only apologizing because I turned out to be successful. Which is it? Silence. James spoke up. Does it matter? We're apologizing. Isn't that what you wanted? I never wanted your apology, James. I wanted your respect, your support, your basic human decency. I wanted you to see me as a person with value regardless of my weight or my choices or my income level, but you couldn't do that. None of you could. We are trying to make amends now now, Margaret said. Isn't that worth something? It might be if it felt genuine, but this feels like damage control. You're embarrassed that the family joke turned out to be more accomplished than any of you. You're embarrassed that your friends and colleagues now know you treated me like garbage. This isn't about making things right with me. This is about making yourselves feel better. My father's face was red. Catherine, we raised you. We gave you every advantage. You owe us a certain amount of respect. I owed you respect when I was a child dependent on you. I don't owe you anything now, and you certainly didn't give me every advantage. You gave me criticism, mockery, and contempt. The advantages I had, I created for myself. Thomas tried a different approach. Look, we're family. Family forgives. Can't we move past this? You want to move past this without actually addressing it. You want me to pretend the last 30 years didn't happen so we can take Christmas card photos, and you can tell people everything's fine. But everything's not fine. You spent decades making me feel worthless. You don't get to erase that with one awkward dinner and a half-hearted apology. So what do you want? My mother's voice was sharp. You want us to grovel. You want revenge. You've already humiliated us publicly. What more do you need? And there it was, the real issue. Not that they'd hurt me, but that I'd embarrassed them. I stood up. I don't want anything from you. That's what you're not understanding. I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need your acceptance. I don't need you to acknowledge my success or apologize for your cruelty. I've built a life I'm proud of with people who actually value me. You're not part of that life. You forfeited that right years ago. You're really going to throw away your family over this? Margaret asked. I'm not throwing away my family. You threw me away long before I became successful. You just didn't realize it because I kept showing up and taking your abuse. I'm done doing that. I'm done making myself small so you can feel big. I turned to David. We should go. As we walked toward the door, my father's voice stopped me. Catherine, if you walk out that door, you're walking away from this family permanently. Is that what you want? I turned back. Dad, I walked away from this family years ago. You just weren't paying enough attention to notice. And that's always been the problem, hasn't it? You never paid attention. You never saw me. And now that the world sees me, now that I matter to people who aren't you, you suddenly want to claim me. But I don't need to be claimed. I claimed myself. We left. We drove to the airport, flew back to Portland, and I haven't spoken to my parents or siblings since. According to Sarah, the family was in chaos after that dinner. My mother told everyone I was cruel and ungrateful. My father said I was dead to him. My siblings tried to play the victim, telling friends that I'd refused their olive branch, that I was holding a grudge. But the public narrative was different. Somehow, word got out about the reconciliation dinner and how it went. A source close to the family, probably Sarah, bless her, told a reporter that the Wellingtons had tried to reconcile with their famous daughter, but only after she became successful, and that she'd rightfully called out their hypocrisy. The story painted me as the hero who stood up to her toxic family. My book sales went up again. I became not just a successful author, but a symbol of someone who refused to accept mistreatment, even from family. 2 years have passed since that dinner. My life is better than it's ever been. My latest book, The Reckoning, just debuted at #1 and has stayed there for 8 weeks. It's about a woman who spends years being invisible to her family, then orchestrates the perfect revenge by simply succeeding and walking away. Art imitating life again. The Netflix series based on my books premiered last month. It's the #1 show on the platform. I was consulted as an executive producer. I made more money from that deal than my father made in his entire legal career. Emma graduated from college and is now in graduate school studying psychology. Lucas is in his sophomore year at university studying film. Both of them are proud of me. Both of them understand why I cut ties with my extended family. They've seen the damage that family did to me, and they support my decision completely. David is still teaching and loving it. He's never cared about status or money. He cares about making a difference in kids' lives, and he's proud of me not because I'm successful, but because I finally stood up for myself. I have real friends now, people who value me for who I am. I have a career I love. I have financial security. I have peace. My mother tried to reach out last month, an email with the subject line, "Please, Catherine." I deleted it without reading it. I don't need closure from them. I found closure on my own. Some people ask if I regret cutting them off, if I miss my family. The answer is complicated. I miss the idea of family. I miss what I wanted them to be, but I don't miss the reality of what they were. I don't miss the constant criticism. I don't miss feeling worthless. I don't miss shrinking myself to fit their narrow definition of acceptable. The most ruthless revenge isn't elaborate schemes or public humiliation. It's living well. It's succeeding despite them. It's building a life so fulfilling that their absence doesn't leave a hole because they were never really present to begin with. My family mocked me for being a fat, lazy housewife. They made me the punchline of their jokes for 30 years, and I let them because I was waiting. I was building. I was becoming someone they'd never imagined imagined I could be. And when I finally revealed who I'd become, I didn't need their validation. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need anything from them because I'd already given myself everything I needed. That's the revenge they never saw coming. Not that I succeeded, but that I stopped needing them to acknowledge it. So what would you do if your family spent decades mocking you and then demanded forgiveness when they realized you'd succeeded? Would you forgive them? Would you let them back in? Or would you do what I did and walk away, knowing that some relationships aren't worth salvaging, even if they're blood? The lesson my family taught me isn't the one they intended. They taught me that respect isn't automatic, even in families, that blood doesn't excuse cruelty, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is succeed quietly, reveal yourself strategically, and walk away from people who never deserved you in the first place. I'm C.M. Winters. I'm Catherine Morrison. I'm a best-selling author, a mother, a wife, and a woman who refused to let anyone else define her worth. And that's the story of how the family joke became the family legend they'll never be able to claim. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gives someone out there the courage to stop accepting mistreatment from people who should be supporting them. I hope it reminds you that success is the best revenge, but only if you're living for yourself, not for their validation. Please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and let me know what city you're listening from, because your story matters too. And maybe you're the underestimated one in your family who's going to shock everyone. Remember, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's not needing to prove anything at all. That's the lesson Dad taught us. Well, not my dad, but that's the lesson I'm teaching you.